And I told him that I think, and maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, maybe, but I told him, maybe trying to provoke him a little bit, that I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War.
Oh boy, people's heads are spinning after that one. If you aren't familiar with the drama du jour, recently, about 48 hours ago, maybe 3 days ago now, I don't know, Tucker Carlson had the audacity to have a historian on who sees things a little differently. Freak out. Everybody run around in a circle. His name is Darryl Cooper, and his podcast is called Martyrmade. I followed this guy for years. He did an incredible deep dive on Israel-Palestine and kind of the birth of Zionism, and I found it to be one of the most impartial tellings of 100-plus year historical period I've ever come across. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, very educational. Let's start with a little preface here. In history, you're going to have to cherry pick things because we're talking about millions, if not billions of people all interacting with one another in a variety of ways. You can't possibly know all of those interactions. You're going to have to select some things to come up with a narrative by which you evaluate things. Everybody does it, even the most impartial people. Darryl Cooper is no doubt guilty of the same, because that's the only way we can actually view history. We don't have a window into the past by which we can actually evaluate these things and know definitively this did that and that did this. You have to read a ton of sources, obviously preferably primary sources, and you come to your own conclusions. But setting all that aside, and setting aside whether or not you agree with Mr. Cooper, I found the interview to be relatively tame. In fact, it was slow. It was, in my opinion, no disrespect to either of the men involved, but I thought it was one of the more boring conversations that kind of delved into how he evaluates history. And like, sure, it's interesting if you're a historian or a wonk like me, but for most people, I'm sure it was like, this is kind of a snooze fest. About 45 minutes in, they get into his argument that he's trying to make, that he perceives Churchill to be the primary villain in World War II. Now, I'm not at all sure that I even agree with that, to be honest. But I think that the case he makes is a compelling one. And I personally, I believe that every leader involved in World War II, including FDR and Truman, who greenlit the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Hirohito, Stalin, obviously Hitler, and Churchill, and FDR, we're all villains. And I know this is... people go, oh, you're trying to ride the fence here, not say who's bad. It's like, no, actually I'm not. I'm saying they're all bad. I'm saying varying degrees of evil, in fact. I will upgrade your bad, and I'll raise you evil. I think these people were evil. These were the machinations of truly power-mad lunatics, and the consequence of their actions resulted in tens of millions of people dying. And I don't understand this desire, this adamant need to have good versus evil. Good guy, bad guy. It's simply not that simple. It is not so black and white. I don't know how people continue to make these arguments as we have lived through modern war propaganda campaigns when it comes to Russia, Ukraine. If you're a longtime listener of this show, I have delved deep into this topic. And if you look at the lead up to that war, it's just egregious, lie after lie, deception after deception. Like, they're not telling you the truth. And then when it comes to the war itself, once Russia finally invaded in, I believe it was February of 21, maybe it was 22. Everything's blurring together. The war propaganda hit a fever pitch. If you remember Snake Island or the Ghost of Kiev, I mean, there's massive war propaganda that happens in modern times. And even as I disprove some of it in real time, the vast majority of people don't know that. They don't know that it was nonsense. They still are buying it hook, line, and sinker. So when it comes to a war that was 80 years ago, if you think it should not be allowed that we question some of the narratives of that war, it's absurd. It's absurd. Speaking of the Lusitania, World War I, all through Vietnam and and the War on Terror, WMDs, to, like I said, the Ghost of Kiev, or the Maidan Revolution that's totally just written off as a nothing burger when it comes to the escalations with Russia. Sure, as if the U.S. State Department wasn't involved, as if Victoria Nuland wasn't on the ground giving out cookies to people. I mean, if all of these wars that we know were predicated off of lies are able to be discussed openly now, why not this war? Gulf of Tonkin with Vietnam. Sorry, there's so many examples, right? There's so many examples of the people of the world being lied to as a precursor to war. It's not the exception, it's the rule. That's what happens. We're lied to constantly to get us inflamed and furious enough that we will greenlight, or at least we will cheer along, or at least we'll stay quiet as another country is invaded. Iraq and Afghanistan, which had basically nothing to do with that attack in New York. I'd rather not get deboosted, so I'm just going to say it like that. Most of those hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. Did we invade Saudi? No, they're our ally. Come on. All right, so point being, all of these wars based off of lies. But World War II couldn't be more simple. I'm not some World War II historian. Like, probably the deepest dive read I've ever done on World War II was Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War by Patrick J. Buchanan, former presidential candidate. And I thought it was fascinating. Does he get some things wrong? Probably. I'm not going to pretend to be an authority figure on World War II history. People dedicate their entire lives to that endeavor. So I am certainly not going to throw my hat in the ring as like, listen to me, I'm an authority figure on it. All I'm going to say is that I think it's totally reasonable, given that every other war we were lied to in during the event and then after, it's totally fair to view this war in that fashion, or through that lens, and challenge the narratives that we've been brought up upon, or brought up with. Like, in public school, I was basically taught that it was like, yes, Hitler invades Poland, World War II begins, that's all there is to it. It has nothing to do with the blockades and sanctions that persisted for years after peace had already been agreed to during World War I. And the starvation and the devastation that happened and the financial destitution that happened because of the reparations that the German people were forced to pay. Like, you can argue that there was that they should have been forced to pay reparations. Maybe so. But you also have to then acknowledge that that created tremendous pain amongst those people. And in my estimation, you don't see the rise of a strongman dictator a la Adolf Hitler if you deal with the end of World War I in a better way. Additionally, I don't think that World War II happens if America doesn't get involved in World War I, because I don't think it's such an overwhelming victory in World War I where you're able to force them into accepting the terms of surrender that they did. And it's like, okay, can we have that discussion? Is that justifying what the Nazis did? Like, no. What they did was atrocious. Like, unspeakably evil. But they would rather you just say good guy, bad guy. That's all you're allowed to say. Are we allowed to talk about the lead up, like the unbelievable abuses that the Palestinians dealt with for 40 fucking years? No. October 7th. That's when that war began. That's all you're allowed to talk about. That's all you're allowed to know. Was October 7th atrocious? Yes. Was Putin and Russia invading Ukraine atrocious? Yes. Hundreds of thousands of people have died as a consequence of it. But are we allowed to discuss the U.S. State Department's involvement in both? The lead up. Can we? If we'd like to avoid wars moving forward, wouldn't it be better if we actually evaluate what transpired prior to the invasion? Do you think that all of these invasions are just predicated off of nothing? That it's just pure rage and desire for conquest. There's nothing more to it. I mean, could you have a more childlike view of history than that? Given the cost, the toll, the amount of risk that's naturally involved in those decision-making processes. That Russia has now been kicked off of SWIFT and basically sanctioned into oblivion and kicked off the world stage and just become a total pariah state. Do you think they made that decision willy-nilly? Given that we actually have records of them imploring, begging NATO, and specifically America, to back off from including Ukraine into NATO. Like that, this is on record. This is not me rewriting history. This is not me being sympathetic or trying to excuse Putin's decision. It's not. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying what led to it. And could we have done something differently? And the answer is almost always yes. But only if we are adult enough to have these conversations. Only if we're actually willing to reevaluate some of the preconceived notions that we have about these affairs. And I'll admit, I've been very fortunate to become good friends with Scott Horton and to get to read a pre-release of his book that lays out in excruciating detail all of the provocations that led to Putin's decision to ultimately invade Ukraine. I know this better than 99% of probably not just the American people, but 99% of the people on the planet. And that's all credit to Scott Horton. I read a book. That's it. A huge book, but I don't get credit for that research. But if you haven't done that, it's really easy to just have CNN and Fox News and all these other corporate hacks, along with the entire political establishment, bipartisan, by the way, convince you that this is extraordinarily simple. That Vladimir Putin is in fact this generation's Adolf Hitler. That's what they'd have you believe. And this is, in fact, why I decided to do an episode on this, is that I think it's super important that of all the wars that we challenge, we might want to challenge the biggest war in human history and the legacy of it, because it is being utilized on a daily basis to justify the escalations that we are participating in when it comes to Russia and Vladimir Putin. How many times have you heard them bring up Chamberlain? Appeasement. We can't appease Putin. He's going to roll across Europe. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. There's been no signs that that's in the cards. But for years, they've been talking about it. And the reason they're able to do so is because the legacy of World War II has been so deeply embedded into our psyche. And I don't know how, for foreigners that are listening to this, you may feel differently. Maybe your educational process has been different when it comes to World War II. I'm sure it has been to a certain extent. I just don't know how much. But for Americans in particular, we are taught from as early as I can remember that we were the good guys, and it's as simple as that, and they were the bad guys, and it's as simple as that. And that's really all there is to it. It's only with maturing, growing old and being able to read about these things and to think about them more deeply, that I've come to the conclusion that, well, yes, I do think that there's varying degrees of evil on both sides, and there was certainly evil that was committed by the Germans, my God. I think that it's also fair to consider the response and whether or not that was just, whether or not it was moral. I mean, the firebombing of Dresden and Tokyo is one of the worst atrocities in human history. Not to mention the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're talking about the incineration between those events of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Just think about what I just said there. Is there any other event where hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people get incinerated and we're not allowed to say, man, that's pretty fucked up? No, just this one. This is the only one where it's totally okay. In fact, it's not okay to question it, to say, man, was that necessary? You can have your own opinion once you think about it deeply, and that's all I'm asking you to do. That, yes, it was just, and that it was necessary, and that ultimately it saved lives. People say that. Otherwise, there would have been the war in the Pacific that would have just gone on and dragged on, and it would have cost us millions of American lives. It's arguable. There's also arguments that had you allowed the Emperor of Japan to stay in power, they were prepared to give up. I'm not sure. Maybe they wouldn't have. Maybe we would have ended up in a 5 years longer war that wipes us out. Maybe. But is it fair to just think about it? Am I allowed? Am I permitted as a free man to consider the consequences of those decisions, both then and in hindsight? I think we ought to. It's bizarre to me that this knee-jerk reaction, it's really childish. It's truly childish. Ben Domenech, I don't know how you pronounce his name. I think that's it. He's the husband of Meghan McCain. He literally posts a movie clip, a Hollywood movie of the liberation of one of the concentration camps. And he goes like, I'm on the side of my grandfather, my grandpappy. I've been to the graveside. I've seen, died in World War II on the tombstone. It's like, man, this is not even about degrading the legacy of the soldiers who millions of which fought unbelievably heroically. And they did so with the best of intentions. So I'm not challenging them either. And I'm not trying to degrade their legacy either. I'm saying the leadership, the decisions that the political class made that escalated to the gravest war in human history ought to be looked at. You don't have to agree with my assessment as to them all being evil, but you ought to admit that there was evil on all sides of this, and was it justified? Was it okay? Is there a lesson we can learn moving forward? And the reason I think this is so important is, as I said, the pretext for basically every war since World War II is that you must not appease dictators. You must fight them as early as possible, lest you end up in another world war. Well, here's the problem with that logic. If you operate in that frame, then when there is a skirmish that is not in fact a dictator that has intentions of global conquest, but you respond in that fashion, well, you may end up in a world war that you wouldn't have otherwise. You understand that? You see where I'm going here? For instance, Putin was interested in keeping Ukraine out of NATO. If you perceive that decision as just the beginning invasion of his intention to then roll through Poland and then roll through the rest of Europe, well, then you have to fight him now. In fact, it would be foolish not to bring all of NATO into Ukraine to fight him there, lest you lose more innocents throughout the rest of Eastern Europe and the rest of Europe. But what if that's not his intention? What if he's explicitly saying otherwise? What if we actually know that that's not true? Well, then we might be able to avoid a full-on NATO war against Russia and its allies, which would potentially include China, potentially include Turkey or Syria or Iran. Like, can you see how this belief that we must avoid being Chamberlain at all costs could lead us into escalating into another world war? Well, the obvious answer is yes, of course. Which is why the premise is flawed in the first place, why you must be certain that you are actually up against a dictator, not just with a desire for global conquest, but a capacity to do so. Putin doesn't have that capacity. You'd have to be out of your fucking mind to think that he does. He has just spent years fighting in Ukraine. If you think he has the capacity to roll across or the desire to roll across all of Europe, you're not paying attention. Or you're just watching CNN. I don't know which. It doesn't matter. You're wrong. So I think that's the main reason that I think it's super important that we reevaluate the history of World War II. And that is not to say we then rewrite and hagiographize the Axis side. I'm certainly not intending to do that, nor do I think that you need to. I'm just saying, really look at it. Really think for yourself. And that's... If that is foreboding, well, then we have a real fucking problem, don't we? A real problem. Because if we can't get the narratives right on past wars, we have zero chance of getting the narratives right on the current war we're in or the future escalating larger war that we might be entering into. And that's why I'm so disturbed by the response to this interview. Genuinely disturbed.
Now, he didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. But I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. Or just, I mean, at every step of the way, like people are very often, I find, surprised to learn. There's a two-step process.
Well,
right?
why don't you just make the case for that? Okay, so you've made your statement. A lot of people are thinking, well, wait a second. You said Churchill, my childhood hero, the guy with the cigar.
Yeah. Well, and the next thought that comes into their head is that, oh, you're saying Churchill was the chief villain, therefore his enemies, Adolf Hitler and so forth, were
Stalin,
the protagonists, right?
Yeah.
That they're the good guys if you think he's a villain. That's not the case. That's not what I'm saying.
I've got to go do the show with Luke, but I will be back to finish up. I got a lot to say about the Dave Smith versus Nick Fuentes battle. Man, these internecine battles are so exhausting, but I do have some thoughts on it, so I'll see you guys in a bit. Today's episode of Liberty Lockdown is once again brought to you by our friends over at Crowd Health. Health insurance is confusing, expensive, and frustrating, and claim denials are becoming more and more common. In fact, 1 in 5 Obamacare claims were denied last year, and that is simply unacceptable. The headache of health insurance is exactly why Crowd Health was created. It's not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. So stop sending money to big insurance companies who profit off of not paying your bills and check out Crowd Health. Health insurance processes are an absolute nightmare. I can't tell you how many times I have pulled out my hair, so much so I've gone bald. Joking about that part, but seriously though, it's a major pain. Crowd Health is totally different. Welcome to Crowd Health, the health insurance alternative. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. And of course, you'll join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months by using code LOCKDOWN at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code LOCKDOWN. And we're back. Look, some breaking news just came out while I was doing the show with Luke, and then I did Tower Gang, and now I'm actually able to talk to you guys. But the big news is the allegations against Tenet Media, which I'm familiar with because Timcast IRL, or Tim Pool rather, licensed the culture war to Tenet Media. And in fact, I'll break some news for you guys. I knew some of the people that were in that network. I didn't really know Lauren Chen. There was one other person. I can't remember who I talked to, but it was like 7-8 months ago when Luke and I had just started Best Political Show, and we were looking to bring in additional revenue. So we were seeing if Timcast or Tenet or anybody else basically was interested in licensing one weekly show from us, or one weekly or monthly or something like that, just to add some additional revenue. They said that they were in a freeze at the time. Tenet Media said that they were in a freeze, but they were interested and that they would get back to us. And they never did. And thank God, because now I'm not named in this indictment. Granted, there are no charges that are being brought against Tim Pool. Let me make that very clear. I don't think there's any charges being brought against Benny Johnson or Dave Rubin. So they are the victims in this. Let's be very clear. The people that are dragging their names and tarnishing their reputations off of these charges, I think, are doing so out of competitive spirits, like they're trying to crush a competitor, or they're idiots, or they're propagandists, or you can decide for yourself. But I read through the entire charging document, and it's total nonsense. So I'm gonna read you some of it, because I feel like instead of me just telling you what it is, it'd be better to give you kind of the lowdown. This is the United States of America versus Konstantin Kalashnikov and Elena Afanasieva. I can't pronounce those names. Apologies. Introduction. Intro really tells you everything you need to know, so we're just going to read these 2 pages. RT, formerly known as Russia Today, is a state-controlled media outlet funded and directed by the government of Russia. After Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 22, RT was sanctioned, dropped by distributors, and ultimately forced to cease formal operations in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. In response, RT created, in the words of its editors-in-chief, an entire empire of covert projects. End quote. Designed to shape public opinion in Western audiences, one of RT's covert projects, as described herein, is its funding and direction of a Tennessee-based online content creation company. Now, My understanding is that Lauren Chen lives in Tennessee, so I assume that's her company. It's just listed as U.S. Company 1. I don't know. So, grain of salt there. Over at least the past year, RT and its employees, including Konstantin Kalashnikov, a.k.a. Kostya, and Elena, the defendants, have deployed nearly $10 million laundered through a network of foreign shell entities to covertly fund and direct U.S. Company 1. U.S. Company 1 publishes English-language videos on multiple social media channels, including TikTok, Instagram, X, and YouTube, using multiple fake personas. Oh, excuse me, and YouTube, period. I'm assuming that's Tenet Media. Continues. Using multiple fake personas, Afantsieva edited, posted, and directed the posting by U.S. Company 1 of hundreds of videos. Many of the videos published by U.S. Company 1 contain commentary on events and issues in the United States, such as immigration, inflation, and other topics related to domestic and foreign policy. So basically, they just cover the news. Immigration, inflation, and other topics related to domestic and foreign policy. That's the news. Who doesn't talk about that if you're in a political commentating space? I don't know. Seems kind of ridiculous. Continuing. While the views expressed in the video are not uniform, the subject matter and content of the videos are often consistent with the government of Russia's interest in amplifying U.S. domestic division in order to weaken U.S. opposition to core government of Russia interests, such as its ongoing war in Ukraine. So the accusation is essentially that they were buying these people's voices to assist public opinion in not wanting to, I assume, fund Ukraine in the war against Russia. Well, I hate to break it to you, but knowing Tim Pool how I do, he didn't support this the funding of the war in Ukraine long beforehand. So I guess you could argue they signed him because they wanted him to be more successful, as he continued to say what he was already saying. I don't know. I've been on Timcast probably 10 times at this point. I don't know how many exactly. And I've never had notes. I've never been steered into any topics. I've never been told what to say. The only thing I've been told not to say is like threats of violence, because you have to be careful about that. Otherwise, you'll get a strike on your channel, and you don't want that. Basically, just general YouTube guidelines, but they don't even really tell me that. They just know that I'm a professional and I'm not going to, do something to damage their operations. So I try not to. Aside from that, free reign. So I don't understand the incentive structure here. I don't see what the play is. Totally mystifying to me. Just being honest with you, I don't get it. I don't know what the angle is. I don't know why this would be to their benefit. Because Tim was going to keep saying what he was going to say. I was going to keep saying what I was going to say. So I don't understand. Since publicly launching in or about November 2023, U.S. Company 1 has posted nearly 2,000 videos and have garnered more than 16 million views on YouTube alone. U.S. Company 1 never disclosed to its viewers that it was funded and directed by RT, nor did U.S. Company 1 or its two founders and principal executives, founder 1 and 2, register with the Attorney General as an agent or of a foreign principal as required by law. So that's where FAR comes in. Kalashnikov, Afanasieva, founder 1 and founder 2, also worked together to deceive two U.S. online commentators who respectively have over 2.4 million and 1.3 million YouTube subscribers. I assume that's Benny Johnson and Tim Pool, but I'm not 100% certain. That's just my assumption. Founder 1 and 2 contracted with commentator 1 and 2 to produce videos using commentator 1 and 2's own names and leveraging their existing audiences for license and publication by U.S. Company 1, which I assume is Tenet. Kalashnikov, founder 1 and 2, worked together to mask U.S. Company 1's true source of funding, i.e. RT, by falsely portraying to commentator 1 and 2 that U.S. Company 1 was sponsored by a private investor named Edward Gregorian. In truth, and in fact, Gregorian was a fictional persona. For example, during contract negotiations, commentator 1 requested that founder 1 provide a profile or article on Edward Gregorian. In response, founder 1 sent commentator 1 a one-page profile provided to founder 1 by another fictional persona purporting to represent Edward Gregorian, falsely describing Edward Gregorian as an accomplished finance professional who had held various positions in Brussels and France at a multinational bank, including director of private banking division and wealth management. After receiving the fictitious profile, commentator 1 agreed to work with U.S. Company 1 and produce approximately 130 videos that were published on U.S. Company 1's platform. I'm guessing that's Tim Pool, but I'm not 100% certain. Background on Russian influence operations. RT is a Russian state-funded and state-directed media outlet As RT's editor-in-chief has publicly acknowledged, since RT receives budget from the state, it must complete tasks given by the state. For nearly 2 decades, RT has promoted the objectives of the government of Russia by publishing disinformation and propaganda, leveraging its international network to amplify the government of Russia's message to foreign audience, and using its guise as a conventional media outlet to lend credibility to that message. I don't know how that's different from CNN or MSNBC or ABC News or CBS News. I don't know how it's really that different, to be honest, but I guess it's different because the funding comes directly from the government as opposed to surreptitiously like the American government does through Mockingbird, but, whatever. Anyways, in or about March 22, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 22, the European Union, United Kingdom, and Canada banned broadcasting by RT. That same month, RT also ceased its operations in the United States after major television distributors dropped the network. But as RT itself has boasted, despite its post-March 22 bans on broadcasting and lack of formal distribution channels in the U.S., Canada, the United Kingdom, and the European Union, the government of Russia continues to use RT to direct disinformation and propaganda at Western audiences. For example, on or about February 25th, 2024, RT's editor-in-chief declared during a Russian television appearance that public opinion in the West is changing very rapidly and very cheerfully, due in part to RT. RT's editor-in-chief further explained that despite being banished everywhere on February 25th, referring to the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of 22, RT had built an enormous network, an entire empire of covert projects that is working with the public opinion, bringing truth to Western audiences. Interesting that they refer to their, bought and paid for propaganda as truth, but obviously it's illegal, terrible, dangerous propaganda. And it's all lies, right? Well, maybe. I'm sure some of it is. That's the big scandal. If you can't tell, I am not really buying it. I don't see it as a big scandal, and I think that the timing of this is interesting, to put it mildly. I mean, we're, 60 days out from a presidential election, and this news drops, and it just happens to, you got to keep in mind, Tim and Benny and all these people are not, and Dave Rubin are not being charged with anything. In fact, it's very clear that they were, in my opinion, they were defrauded. I think that's the word for it. They were lied to, right? It was false pretenses by which they agreed to these deals, thinking that it was an investor that didn't exist. I mean, how could you possibly blame them for that? They didn't know that the money was coming from the Russian government through RT. So I think that they're the victims, obviously, and I don't know if they'll be forced to refund that money or how that works. I have no idea. But let's be honest, we already have an example of Russia collusion, Russia election interference stuff that was largely overblown and largely deceptive all the way back in 2016, and we learned about this and Mueller report and all this stuff, right? We've done this for freaking years now. I'm pretty tired of it, to be honest. So obviously, it's really beneficial to have all of these center-right media figures that are very prominent, have huge audiences and huge followings, and people that listen to them and are influenced by them, to now think to themselves, am I watching Russian propaganda? Well, I better shut it off, right? And I'm sure that their audiences will be damaged by this, even though quite clearly they were the victims. They were not, criminals in any regard. So it shouldn't hurt their reputations, but I'm sure it will for some people that are misinformed or told lies. So I think that's what makes me most skeptical as to the legitimacy and the timing of this. The timing of it is kind of the most glaring. It's 60 days, less than, before an election. And now you have a narrative that any center-right media, and I'd include myself in that as a libertarian, is now tarnished as, you don't stand with Ukraine? You're not all in for Ukraine? You're not interested in the next $100 billion aid package to Ukraine? Well, then you must be getting paid by Russia. That's the only explanation. It can't be that you're an America First non-interventionist. No, you are a Putin puppet, which is exactly what they've been saying to me and about me, comment sections online, for years now. Ever since I went on Timcast, by the way, before that deal was even inked. And I gave this very lengthy breakdown of the unbelievable errors and missteps and just insanity that led to the current dynamic between Russia and Ukraine, largely thanks to the U.S. State Department. And I haven't backed off on that whatsoever, and I'm not doing it because I'm being paid to do it, because I'm not getting paid to do it by anybody. I get a little bit of revenue from you guys for supporting me. Thank you. libertylockdown.locals.com, or you can subscribe on X at LibertyLockPod. I'll follow you back. Ads that I read on here, as far as I know, those are all American companies. I'm not getting any revenue from foreign entities. I hope I don't find out that that's not the case, because they're not paying me very much. So I'm a very cheap Russian propagandist, if so. And then I get a little revenue from YouTube viewers, like very minimal. That's it. That's my revenue. So no Russian I'm doing it for free. If I'm misinforming you with Russian disinformation, I'm doing it for free. Oops. No, I'm just joking. But what will it now enable people to say? Well, Clint and Dave Smith and Scott Horton have been such, adamant oppositional voices against the escalations against Russia, against the aid to Ukraine, against the insanity over there. Well, maybe they're on the payroll, right? It now will allow people who don't know me as well as I'm sure you guys do to try and paint people like me and Dave and everybody else in that light. And I think, if anything, that would be the reason for these charges. Keeping in mind that essentially what they're being charged with is FARA violations. It's the Foreign Agent Registration Act, if I have the acronym right. Essentially, it just says that if you are acting as an agent for a foreign government, you have to disclose that. And if you don't, then you've violated FARA. Well, Hunter Biden, who worked at the behest of the Chinese government and the Ukrainian government and a handful of others I'm forgetting, maybe only one other, but others. And never got charged with that. Interesting, huh? But Tenet Media, because they funded some podcasts, FARA violation. I don't know. I'm just saying, if this rule was being applied universally, I'd be much less skeptical. Make sense? Like, if you were throwing the book at Joe and Hunter Biden, I mean, even if you leave Joe aside and you say, oh, he was just senile, he didn't even know what his son was doing. If you know what Hunter was doing with Burisma and a bunch of other companies and a bunch of other countries, how do you not say that he was an agent for foreign governments and he wasn't disclosing that? How do you not charge him? How? Well, obviously it's because he has political cover, because his dad's the president of the United States. But these other people, no political favors for them. Throw the book at them. Now, I think that from what it sounds like, if these allegations are true, and I don't know, but if it's true that they created entirely fictional persona and they were using offshore banking to misrepresent who the principal of the funding source was, yeah, that's obviously some shady shit. And they probably did it for a reason. And my guess as to the reason is that there was sanctions that were levied against Russia right after they invaded in February of 22. That made it so that you're not allowed to do this, that it makes it illegal. Because other than that, I don't think it should be illegal for a foreign government to fund a media operation. Like, do we have the ability to make business dealings with whoever we want or not? I mean, my personal opinion is that if you're getting funding from any government, hi CNN, hi ABC, hi CBS, hi MSNBC, hi, probably Fox News, like, you ought to disclose that. And they don't. And I think that they do get some of their funding in that way. Just being honest, that's my opinion. Can't prove it. That you ought to disclose it, but I don't think that it should be illegal per se, but you absolutely should be forced to disclose it. So I don't think that it should be illegal. Like BBC. And there's also News in Canada that's funded by the state. None of that's illegal. But I guess because it's a foreign government and they're now our arch enemy that it's illegal. Okay. If it's illegal, it's illegal. I don't know. But I think it's kind of ridiculous. I just think that it ought to be disclosed to the viewer so that they know that, hey, I'm probably being propagandized here. And I think that from there, the viewer ought to be allowed to make up their own mind. I mean, is it fair that the American government gets to use all of their media apparatchiks to propagandize the American people, but other foreign governments don't have that same opportunity to do so? I guess you could say, America, hoorah. They should be the only ones that are allowed to propagandize the American people. Maybe. I would like it to be none of them. If we could go with that, that'd be preferable to me. None of you get to fund media operations. That would be great. But yeah, I just think it's way overblown. It has all of the hallmarks of Russian collusion 2.0. See what I did there? All of the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. So that's my initial assessment, is that it's the timing is interesting. Even though it's not charging any of these people with anything, which is good because they didn't do anything wrong, as best I can tell, it still will damage their reputations, and therefore everybody that has any sort of association with Tim Pool, it will just give stupid people reason for skepticism as to our legitimacy and to whether or not we're being paid by foreign governments to tell you what we think. I'll just be blunt with you guys. You can't buy me. No foreign government could buy, no government period, local or foreign, can buy me. And if I ever sign any deals with any companies at all to change what I think, I will disclose that to you, because I'm not going to do that. Not going to do it. And I think I've been very, very open with you guys. Like, what inspired me to get into this is Dave Smith, and really more than even Dave Smith, Joe Rogan. And what I loved about Joe Rogan, what made me fall in love with his show 15 years ago, or however long ago it was, 2010, I think, was the honesty. That it was just like, he was going to tell you how he felt, what he thought about something. And I think that authenticity is everything in this game. If you aren't being authentic, you're toast. No one will listen to you whatsoever. And that has been, in my opinion, the key to my limited success, is that I am 1,000 trillion billion % authentic with you guys. I am only telling you what I think all the time, and I will never not. That's my only promise to you. It's a pretty good promise, because that's all you probably ought to want, because everybody else is bought and paid for, and everybody else is lying to you. Not in the podcasting space, but I'm saying in the big corporate media space, they're all lying. They're all biting their tongue. None of them are telling you exactly what they think. I am always telling you exactly what I think. That is the reason podcasting is kicking the shit out of them. That is the entire source of our power, is that we get to actually talk to you like any dude at a bar might. Today's episode of Liberty Lockdown is also brought to you by our friends over at sheathunderwear.com. They just sent me a few pairs, and they are the highest quality, most comfortable pair of boxer briefs I have ever owned. No exaggeration. So for 2024, step up your underwear game. Graduate from holes, loose fabrics, cheap cotton briefs that bunch up, and buy the greatest underwear that has ever graced the balls of man. Sheath Underwear, the underwear of legends. Sheath can be worn as regular boxer briefs, or you can use the incredibly high-tech Sheath pouch to keep everything separated. if you're wild like that. I wear these every time I go to the gym, and I can tell you, these are the most comfortable pair of boxer briefs I have ever worn. The website is fully stocked with different designs, winter-based layers to keep you warm, ladies apparel, and more. Go to sheathunderwear.com, and if you use the promo code LIBERTY, you're going to get 20% off. Once again, sheathunderwear.com, promo code LIBERTY for 20% off. That's SHEATH underwear.com, promo code LIBERTY. Get you some. That I'm telling you exactly what I think. That's everything. That's the entire capital that we're working with here. And I would not squander that. And I don't think Tim Pool would squander it either. I really don't. And I don't think he would change what he has to say, aside from, ducking and dodging terms of service violations when it comes to social media platforms or video platforms. I don't think he would change what he has to say either for that reason. I've known the guy for quite a few years now, like 3 years now. Spent a ton of time with him. He's the same dude on screen as he is off. I believe in the guy. A lot of people give him shit. A lot of people don't like him. I don't give a fuck. If I didn't like him, I wouldn't go to bat for him like this at all. I wouldn't, because that's not what I do. I just tell you the truth. I think he's a good guy. So that's where I'm at with it. I just wanted to give you guys the rundown on the case, because I'm already seeing a bunch of scumbags capitalize on this. First up, we got Harry Sisson, who says, a company with a number of huge MAGA Republican creators allegedly got $10 million from the Russian government to spread Russian propaganda. This is your sign to stop listening to Republicans on social media. Yeah, okay. I would like to know that dude's funding source. Could we Could we get that? I would love to know. Love to. Not that I really care, because I don't think most people take him seriously. Then we have Rick Wilson. Says some of the biggest MAGA influencers caught up in an apparent Russian influence operation is the tip of the iceberg. Okay, Rick Wilson of the Lincoln Project. I mean, come on, man. So the reason I bring it up is that they're already capitalizing on this. They're already going to try and use it to tarnish center-right Republican MAGA influencer sphere. Some of the people in the right-wing sphere are definitely sellouts, and they're frauds. Some of them are probably leftists, and they just lie. Daily Wire comes to mind. Anyways, that's just my opinion. I don't know. But you can see what they're doing. Like, good people that are in this space are going to be tarnished as Russian influence operatives. It's not reality. So I just want you guys to be prepared over the coming days. This is going to only increase, I can assure you. Ashley St. Clair had this to say. I like Ashley a lot. She's a friend of mine, so I hope she doesn't take this personally. I totally disagree with her assessment on this. I'll read it to you to do it as good a justice as I can. She says the DOJ indictment suggests that Lauren Chen is an alleged Russian agent who is said to have accepted upwards of $10 million to start Tenet Media and push divisive political rhetoric, Russian propaganda in the U.S. Chen has encouraged Republicans to withhold their vote for Trump for not being conservative and pro-life enough. She has advocated against the 19th Amendment and said Hamas rioters on college campuses were being arrested for free speech. Well, I think, let me go point by point here. She said that she encouraged Republicans to withhold their vote for Trump for not being conservative and pro-life enough. I've seen a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people genuinely are disappointed with Trump's stance on, the abortion, pro-life, pro-choice issue. I don't know that she's made that opinion because of her financing sources. Maybe. I kind of doubt it, but maybe. She's advocated against the 19th Amendment. That has been a common trope amongst right-wing, kind of shitposting, influencing for a long time. I've probably joked about it once or twice. In fact, I'm sure I have. Josie has made a Twitter career out of it. She talks about it all the time, that women's right to vote has basically led to the progressive takeover of our political establishment. If you look at the voting trends, it's kind of hard to argue with. I certainly don't think Lauren Chen saying that is indicative of her being disingenuous, but rather she probably sincerely doesn't like the fact that Democrats win all the time because women vote almost entirely for Democrats, it seems like. Next, and she said that Hamas rioters on college campuses were being arrested for, quote, free speech, end quote. Well, I did not like what was happening to some of the protesters, and I sincerely doubt that Lauren Chen was defending people that were rioting. I don't think she would do that. I've only listened to her stuff, here and there, but she seems to be more in alignment with my view that free speech, even when it's from people we disagree with, should be honored. And in fact, I think she's, I don't want to speak to Lauren Chen's beliefs on the Israel-Palestine conflict because I don't know enough about her beliefs to speak to it. But I think that, yeah, there's a lot of people in America that sincerely think that our aid in that war, both sides, but certainly the military aid to Israel, has not been a good thing. And that people ought to be allowed to speak out against it. We do have a First Amendment, do we not? So I don't think that's indicative of doing anything on behalf of Russia. I don't know why Russia would have a dog in that fight regardless. Seems very strange to me. I don't know. Could be wrong. I doubt it. She continues. She has stated that Trump has abandoned Christian conservatives for the Enriques and Jamals. Seriously. Yes, she probably did say that. I don't know. I don't have anything to say about that. Going to leave this clip here for an appearance I did with Konstantin Kisin and Francis J. Foster months ago, where I said I believe this rhetoric to be boosted by foreign influences and money to cause division before the election.
Exer was misogynist because he said there's two genders, right? But what I see on the right is actual genuine misogyny.
I don't know that that's organic, and I may be stepping into my own conspiracies here, but I don't think it's coincidental that right before the election, the right becomes the exact caricature of what the left had said the right was for years, and it wasn't. Many of us on the right knew that the right was not, this anti-Semitic, misogynistic group of folks. And now all of a sudden we're seeing this rise in misogynistic rhetoric and people who fundamentally believe that women shouldn't vote.
Those of you out there who will just say, well, it's simple, we need to repeal the 19th. And trust me, I am no fan of the 19th Amendment myself. So it turns out that some portions of the internet are just now finding out that I don't actually support democracy, and they're very upset about it.
And people who fundamentally are siding with the people taking over our universities right now, I don't think that's organic. I think there's a lot more foreign bot farms and outside influences boosting these people in the retardosphere than we have any idea about right now. I think it's fundamentally really damaging to allow this rhetoric to go on, this misogynistic rhetoric.
I'm just trying to delve deep.
Just a brief pause here. Again, I don't think that you need to pay people to have these opinions. I have some of these opinions. Do you think that I have these opinions because I'm being paid to? I already explained. No, that's not the reason. I genuinely think that the 19th has assisted Democrats in having a stranglehold over the political establishment. Does that mean that I want to abolish it? No, not necessarily. But like, it's a fair point. It's a fair point that a lot of people have made, and they make it sincerely. It's certainly not indicative of foreign funding to make us so untenable to the voting population that they'll now turn against us and then go vote for the Democrats. Like, come on. That's not, I just don't think that's fair. Just my opinion. I don't know. We'll see what you guys think. Let's finish this.
Deeper into the conspiracy. Are you saying this is kind of deliberate to get Republicans to look dumb and offensive so that they lose the election?
I believe so. I really believe that this is boosted by things that are inorganic, because when you look at the engagement on some of these accounts, it is bananas. At least I don't want to believe that many people truly hold those sentiments. And maybe I'm just too optimistic about humanity and people, but I don't think it's organic at all, that all of a sudden this is sprouting up and we have this many people who genuinely believe that women shouldn't vote. I don't believe that's the case.
I think she's being honest. I think she genuinely believes that. I don't agree with her though. I will say this though. I do think when it comes to social media likes and shares, there's definitely bot farms that are being utilized to amplify certain narratives. Duh. Like if you've seen some of the accounts that just get boosted to infinity because they are coming out very hard against Israel, for instance, I would be surprised if there's not funds that are being used for bot farms to amplify that message because they want it to look more popular than it is. Now, that being said, I think that message is actually quite popular. And the way I demonstrate that to be true is that look at the protests all around the world when it came to the Israel-Palestine war. Like, are you going to tell me that those aren't real people? That they're not, in fact, out there in the streets that are protesting by the hundreds of thousands? Like, no, there's a lot of people that really, really don't like what's happening in Gaza. So I appreciate her perspective in that she doesn't want to believe that there's that many people that want to abolish the 19th or attack Jewish people. I hate to break it to you. I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. I don't fall into that camp of extrapolating my distaste for what's happening between Israel and Palestine to actual anti-Semitism. I don't feel that way, but there are a lot of people that do feel that way. Right? I mean, that's just being honest. There's also a ton of people that believe that the 19th Amendment should be abolished. Some of them jokingly, some of them seriously, but they're not all bots, and they're certainly not all being paid to feel that way. So I didn't hear anything from Lauren there that makes me think, oh, her opinions were being changed because of her funding sources, but I can't know. I've never met her. So, just my 2 cents. No hard feelings, Ashley. I do really like her. She's a really nice person. So just a difference of opinion on this one. But I think it's a huge mistake to buy into this narrative that, in fact, they were changing their messaging for this purpose, but rather based off of Tim Pool, based off of Dave Rubin, based off of Benny Johnson. I don't think that they were changing their messaging. I think they signed a business deal, a licensing deal, to have some of their content be put over on Tenet Media. Tenet Media was using their name recognition to grow their channel, probably to then have the face of whoever they wanted to implant into Tenet Media then be their mouthpiece for actual overt propaganda. I don't think that they were actually getting these creators to change what they had to say or what they were thinking or what they were delivering to the public. That is a level of manipulation that, just given how much revenue Tim produces by telling people how he actually feels, I don't see why he would do it, and I don't think he did it, and I think it's nonsense. So, like I said, I don't know Lauren Chen well enough to go to the mat for her, but based off of what I've seen in those clips, I think she probably thinks that. That's my 2 cents. We'll see what comes of it. All right, let's get into the Dave Smith versus Nick Fuentes kerfuffle.
After getting, really obsessed with reading about all of the wars in the Middle East and in Northern Africa over the last 20 years, you kind of you can't dive that deep into it before you bump up against Israel and realize that there's, they're a pretty active partner in all of this. And that's not there's no need to caricature that position. I'm not saying the Jews are running everything or that. And I don't believe a lot of the kind of hard right-wing theories that essentially, America is the puppet of Israel. I don't think that's right exactly. I think it's much more like America is the empire and Israel is one of our satellites.
So that's what started the major controversy. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that's what started it. There was a lot that went into this, but what I think really started it was that Dave Smith became probably, I don't know if the most, but up there as one of the most prominent voices that was being very critical of the war in Gaza. And he was doing so as a Jewish man in a way that was very clear. This is not about animosity towards Jewish people broadly, but rather harsh criticism of the state of Israel. And now I would love to be able to play for you some of Nick Fuentes' comments, but unfortunately, the clip that I wanted to play for you, I think I would probably get a strike for because he's saying a bunch of things that I think probably aren't allowed on this platform. Sorry, just telling you the truth. So I'm not playing it because I find it so reprehensible we can't hear it or anything like that. I'm just saying I can't do it and still get this episode to you, so that's the reason I'm not. But essentially, his point is, it's not enough to just be opposed to aid to Israel, whether that be financial or military equipment, munitions, things like that. It's not enough. It's not enough to just be critical of the government of Israel. We have to be critical of Jewish influence in all aspects of our lives and in our government and media and everything else. That's like boiling down his many-minute long, very eloquent rant to a truncated version that I hope I can get away with. We'll see. Let me start by saying I don't have any ill will towards Nick Fuentes. I disagree with him on much of this, but there's nothing personal here. I'm just evaluating this. I am friends with Dave, so bias is on the table. But I think that really what happened, this is my opinion, is that Dave got into Nick's lane and was reaching audiences that he used to be able to, that he's not able to anymore. Very, very large audiences, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, the largest audiences you can possibly reach. And he's conveying a message that is in Nick's lane in the sense that it's very critical of the government of Israel, but it doesn't quite take it to the level he would like to see it taken to. And I think that the level that he wants to take it to is an ugly level. It's a level that requires you to basically take on identitarian worldviews and hate that Dave doesn't do, and neither do I, even though I get criticized as if I do constantly just for being critical of the war in Gaza. People think that that's, how I feel. It's not. It hasn't ever been. I have a ton of Jewish people I love. Robbie the Fire Bernstein was just on the show a couple weeks ago. Love the dude. Dave Smith, love the dude. Lots of Jewish people. I don't even know all the people that I know that are Jewish that I like. There's a lot of them, I'm sure. So actually, I think Ashley might be. I don't know. Anyways, point being, my criticism of the nation of Israel, and also when it comes to AIPAC, the influence that it has on our governmental system, is sincere. I think that that's a big problem. But I also think that Dave's claims that it's not exactly clear that we are their puppet or they're our puppet, or America to Israel or Israel to America, I don't think that it is clear. I don't. I think that it's obviously true that there were some Jewish members in the neoconservative movement, including the foundational document that essentially established our foreign policy for the next 20 years, the Clean Break Doctrine, that was sent by David Wormser to Netanyahu, certainly gives you, like, yeah, two Jewish guys that are having this communication that led to foreign policy that was just blunder after blunder, and it was to the advantage of Israel many times. Yes, I see that. True. I don't like it. I'm against that because a lot of innocent people died, and I was robbed blind, and also the Patriot Act, and also countless lost American soldiers. Like, I am pissed about it. It's not good at all. But there's also obvious angles to this that benefits the American people, the American political establishment that aren't Jewish people, that profited tremendously from those wars, and also American geopolitical strategy that helps them in kind of their global domination. There's corporations that certainly aren't Jewish in nature that are profiting very handsomely from those wars. There's just a lot of complexity to this that, for whatever reason, to discuss it with the complexity and the nuance that is kind of necessary to be honest about this, rubs Nick and his cadre of supporters the wrong way. I don't really get it. Like, let me kind of explain the rationale why I don't understand it. What do you want? Like, what's your end goal here? What are you actually shooting for? Because my end goal, what I would like to achieve, is to convince the American people that it is not to our benefit to do the bidding of any foreign government, including China, which we just found out this week that the deputy governor or assistant, some high-level assistant to Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, was just indicted on being a CCP asset. So there's influence from foreign governments in America. Like, that's undeniable. I don't like any of it. I think that the American government, if it's to exist, ought to work to the benefit of the American people, certainly not to foreign governments. And I would like for it to not work to American corporations' interests. It ought to be actually representative of the American people. I know I'm a total, naive child that thinks that the government that allegedly represents us ought to represent us, the people. I know it's ridiculous, but like, if it's going to exist, that's what we ought to be shooting for, you would think, right? So that's my goal, is that, and also no more wars. That's it. And less spending. Try and keep our fiscal house in order so we don't either go bankrupt or have hyperinflation. Totally, like, I'm above board with my claims here, or with my desires. Like, that's what I'm pursuing. That's what I'm interested in. Basically, Ron Paul's vision. If Ron Paul said it, I probably agree with it. That's what I'm shooting for. So if we were to stop foreign aid to Israel, if we were to stop fighting wars either for Israel or using Israel as a pretense to benefit ourselves or increase our geopolitical locations so that then we can use them as our aircraft carrier, as RFK Jr. said, when it comes to wars in, I don't know, Afghanistan, Russia, China, anywhere else in the Middle East or east of that. Yeah, like that's what I would like to not be doing anymore. So I think Dave agrees with me on that. So if that's Dave's goal too, what else are you looking for? Like, serious question. What else are you looking for? If we get the federal government to stop doing those things, how is that not in alignment with America first? Sincere question. I don't get it. So it makes me wonder if are you looking for gulags? Are you looking for, McCarthyist trials to root out this influence wherever you may find it? Do you think, practically speaking, or logistically speaking, do you have the influence? Do you have the American people's support to do so? Do you have the power within the political framework? Do you have any representatives that agree with you that will actually do your bidding when it comes to this? I think the answer on every single front is no. You can't possibly hope to do any better than what Dave and I are pushing towards. So the question then becomes, assuming that you agree with me on that, which you ought to because it's true, why are you being oppositional to Dave Smith? Why? It seems to me that he is delivering kind of what you would like to see achieved in a way that is finding an enormous audience and helping you achieve those goals, but doing so in a way that perhaps doesn't go as far as you want. However, in terms of rhetoric, but in terms of achieving the goal, takes you pretty much as far as you'd like to go. If 55% of the American people agreed with Dave Smith's foreign policy, well then yeah, aid to Israel stops, AIPAC and all that stops, you win. The wars stop, the spending stops, you win. So it leaves me with maybe that's not your goal. Maybe that's not actually what you care about. Maybe there's a little bit of ego going into this. Maybe you're disappointed that what you perceive to be your message, which you have, brought out of the ether and into the political commentating space over the past 5, 6, 7 years, however long you've been doing this, that he's doing it better than you, or that he's being heard by larger audiences than you, that it's no longer your baby, that you feel like you've been ripped off. But let's be honest, like what Dave's espousing is Ron Paul's message. To a certain extent, it's in alignment with Pat Buchanan's message. To a certain extent, it's in alignment with old Republican politics from the early 1900s, when they used to be non-interventionist. Like these are not your ideas in that regard. So if that's not your goal, which it sounds more and more like it's not, then I'd like to understand fully what your goal is. And I think that's where I'll leave it. Because I don't want to assume that you want something way worse than that. I don't know. I really don't know. But it leaves me with either that as option A or option B. It's just jealousy. Because Dave Smith does it in a way that is compelling and gripping and reaches enormous audiences and benefits your cause of a genuine America First movement. One that basically creates non-interventionist policy that stops with all the foreign entangling alliances, not just with Israel, but with all these other nations, exiting NATO. I mean, goodness gracious. It couldn't be more America First. Like the libertarian non-interventionist policy is extraordinarily America First. So if you find that to be so problematic that you have to now drag Dave on the regular, I don't understand why. And yeah. I hope I delivered that in a way that people will understand that I'm really not trying to pick a fight here. I don't get it. I don't get it. It looks to me like it's an ego battle more than it is a principles battle, but I could be wrong. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of thoughts on this one. Feel free to comment down below if you think I'm wrong, or if you think that there's additional details I'm missing. I'm not a huge viewer of Nick. Like I see his clips here and there. So I could be getting some of his positions wrong, and if I am, forgive me. I know he streams like a dozen hours a week. I'm not watching that. I work a ton. So certainly I don't know all of his beliefs and opinions. I'm doing this off of clips. So just a little little disclaimer. Anyways, but I do know Dave very well, and I've listened to his shows for years and years, and I know his policies inside and out, and I don't think there's much that he and I disagree on. So I feel like I can speak to that pretty well, and I'm pretty confident that that's about as America First as you could possibly hope for. And let's be honest, we're kind of delusional to even think that we're going to achieve what Dave's prescribing, which would be fucking amazing. So this is why, more than anything, I'm mystified that you would not want to see him succeed and assist you in achieving those goals. That's my thoughts. Oh God, this one's going to create a firestorm. I'm covering so much. I don't like talking about inner commentator battles and shit like that, but like this one was important to me because I love Dave and I don't understand this, and I just wanted to get my thoughts out there, see what you guys think. So anyways, leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, share it around, and hug and kiss your mothers. I'll be back with you in a couple days with a new one. See you soon. Peace.